Alright, so this time I'm reviewing a book that a lot of you have requested for a long time. It's called The Holy Bible.
This is the introduction song. It's not very good, but it's not too long.
So this one is a little bit unusual in that it is very popular. Yes, it's literally the best-selling book of all time. They've sold billions of copies, but it's not really a traditional narrative. It's more a collection of short stories with a couple of overarching themes and some returning characters. And is it any good? And not really. It's kind of just like a bunch of cliches, and a lot of the stories are admittedly really weird, but sometimes it's funny weird, and sometimes it's gross weird, and some of these get kind of fucked up, to be honest. So overall, it's not that great, but it has its moments. Let's just go in. Let me explain what I mean. So the main returning character throughout all of this is this guy named God, and he is kind of a mysterious figure. He's like a deity that, the first story is about him literally creating the world, and he also just has a lot of very specific rules that he wants the people in that world to follow, and most of the stories involve the conflict between people that don't want to follow God's rules and people that do want to follow God's rules. And, like, God will, like, send down lightning and shit occasionally to punish the people that didn't follow him. And he's the main overarching thread throughout all of this. And beyond that, I can't really talk about each story individually, so I'm just going to talk about a couple that really stood out in one way or another. So the first one is about the creation of humanity, where God creates a man and a woman named Adam and Eve, and he just puts them in this area called the Garden of Eden. It's supposed to be like this super nice paradise and everything, but there's one rule, and it's that you can't eat fruit from this one tree. They call it the Tree of Knowledge, and it's kind of an arbitrary rule, to be honest, and that's the thing about God that really got me, is that a lot of his rules are arbitrary, and he kind of comes across as a bit of a dick. Like, I guess he's not really a protagonist or a traditional hero, but it is weird to see him just be a giant ass to people. Yeah, Adam and Eve are going around in this garden for a while, they're feeling fine, having fun, and then this, like, talking snake comes out of nowhere and talks to Eve, and he's like, hey, you should eat the fruit, and eventually she does, and she's like, oh hey, I'm all naked and shit, because apparently her and Adam were, like, dumb before, and so she, like, makes clothes to cover herself, and then God's like, hey, you're covering yourself, why are you doing that? Did you eat from the fruit from the Tree of Knowledge? Which, why would he need to ask that? Because a lot of the other stories make it clear that God is omnipotent and he sees everything, but whatever. And then, long story short, Adam also eats the fruit, and then God banishes them from the garden forever. And, yeah, like I said, he just comes across as a dick. So that first story is weird, but the weirdest part of it is that all of humanity is apparently descended from these two people. So that's a lot of cousin fucking, is all I'm saying. Another story that really stood out to me, and not in a necessarily good way, was a story of this guy named Abraham and his son Isaac. Now, there's actually quite a lot of stories involving Abraham in the Bible, but the biggest one is this one where God comes to him and he says, hey, you need to prove that you love me more than you love your son, so you need to kill your son Isaac. And Abraham's like, ooh, I don't know about that. And God's like, come on, bro, do it. And so Abraham literally goes to the top of a mountain with his son and ties him down, and he's about to stab him. And then this angel, and angels are like servants of God in this angel comes down and he's like, hey, don't kill your son. You shouldn't do that. You passed the test. What the fuck? You don't love me unless you do this. And he's like, but come on, babe, that's like really, really hard. Well, I guess you don't love me then. Okay, fine, I'll do it. And, like, this dude is about to fucking kill his son as well, so it's not like Abraham's in the right here. The only one I feel sorry for here is Isaac. So, yeah, that's a weird one, but don't worry, it gets weirder. Okay, so this next one, I'm just gonna read out loud to you, and most of the passages in the Bible are written in sort of a weird poetry sort of way, which makes it a little hard to follow sometimes, but that's one issue I had with it overall. But just listen closely to this. One day the older daughter said to the younger, "Our father is old, and there is no man around here to give us children, as is the custom all over the earth. Let's get our father to drink wine and then sleep with him, and preserve our family line through our father." So, more incest. The next day the older daughter said to the younger, "Last night I slept with my father. Let's get him to drink wine again tonight, and you can go in and sleep with him so we can preserve our family line through our father." So they got their father to drink wine that night also, and the younger daughter went in and slept with him. Again, he was not aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. So, if you had trouble following that, this dude got raped by both of his daughters, and then they got pregnant from it. And I guess there's a moral there somewhere, but I'd be lying if I said I knew what it was. And then there's, like, other stories, you know, where, like, God floods the earth and only one guy and his family survive and they repopulate the earth, so, like, at this point, we're inbred to, like, the 12th degree, so, you know, whatever. And then there's one really funny one where, like, this dude named Elisha is bald, and a bunch of children make fun of him for being bald, so God, like, summons a bear, and the bear goes and eats all the children. And that one admittedly was pretty fucking funny. But most of these are just weird and kind of show God being an asshole. But that's just the first half. You see, the second half of the Bible is, like, this thing called New Testament, and that one's a little different, because rather than focusing on God, it focuses on a new character who is God's son, named Jesus. Or, I think he's his son. He might, like, just be God in human form. It's left kind of ambiguous, to be honest. And Jesus has his moments, like, there's parts where he chases people out of a temple with a whip, and he, like, hangs out with prostitutes, and he walks on water and turns water into wine, and he seems like just a chill guy for the most part. But, like, he really does tell you, oh, you should love your neighbor, and be nice to people, and hey, nobody's perfect, just let he who's without sin cast the first stone. And so you're like, okay, yeah, this Jesus fellow is a much better protagonist than God was. Like, he really does feel like a hero. Maybe not a traditional hero where he, like, punches bad guys and stuff, but he's, like, a good guy, and he has some good morals to everything. But then it takes this really weird, dark turn at one point, and, like, one of Jesus' friends betrays him, and, like, then they beat the shit out of him and whip him a bunch, and, like, it goes on for a while, trust me. They beat him and whip him and, like, put a crown of thorns on him, and then they nail him to a fucking cross, and you're like, whoa, this got dark all of a sudden. Like, it was kind of like Clan of the Cave Bear, where it just gets really, really dark out of nowhere and violent and just kind of unpleasant, and I really was very, very confused and concerned by it. But I guess it did catch me off guard, so So then everyone's really sad that Jesus is dead because he was, like, their bro and everything. And then he comes back to life a couple days later, and he keeps doing his thing. And that was kind of disappointing, because, like, that was one of the few times in any of these stories that the good guy lost, that the good guy died. And so we were really starting to feel more narrative stakes, like, oh shit, no one's safe now, the main character just fucking died. But then, like, he comes back, so, I mean, really, it just drove in how much of a Mary Sue Jesus is. Because, like, after a while of just doing his thing again, he literally ascends up to heaven because he's God or the Son of God. I don't know, they really never explain it. And it ends not long after that, so there's just not much else to say. So yeah, this is a very, very weird, very strange book. Like, I guess I wouldn't say it's bad per se. Like, there's certainly really, really bad parts and really, really weird, fucked up parts, but there's also some good parts, you know? There's some good morals in there, and there's one or two interesting characters, and some parts of it are just really fucking funny. Like, I look up the story of Elisha. It really is funny. But overall, there's, like, no continuity. It feels like it was written by dozens of different people over the course of hundreds of years. It really does. And there's just not an overarching plot thread, which upset me a little, and there's very few characters that stay around for long, And so I can't really recommend it. It was a long book too. Like the copy I read was over 1,000 pages, and they were big pages too. I don't have it with me, but it was big. And so, yeah, I think you can skip this one. If this video confused you, please check the upload date.